At 34 years old, I found myself reflecting on a life that once felt perfectly orchestrated, a harmonious blend of love, trust, and companionship. I've been married to my wife, Sarah, for over 8 wonderful years, and together, we've spent a full decade as a couple. Our marriage has been a source of deep satisfaction, filled with shared dreams and intimate moments that felt like they were woven into the fabric of our lives. Sarah, a passionate elementary school teacher, is not just my wife but also my best friend. Her laughter lights up my days, and our physical chemistry has always been electric. I trusted her with my heart, my secrets, and my life, just as she trusted me with hers. Yet as I sit here recounting our story, I can't help but notice the shift into past tense, a grim foreshadowing of the tumult that was about to unfold. By choice, we had decided to wait before starting a family. We wanted to savor our time together as a couple, to explore our passions, and to save up for a down payment on a home where we could envision building a life filled with love and laughter. Last year, we achieved that dream, purchasing a beautiful house in a neighborhood that felt like it was straight out of a storybook. This year, we had big plans to start a family, but those dreams have been shattered by unexpected revelations. My career was stable, providing us with a comfortable income, while Sarah thrived in her role as an elementary school teacher. Her students adored her, and the parents praised her dedication. It was hard to imagine anything disrupting our blissful life together. But on one particular Tuesday, everything changed. I was going about my day when I received a phone call from a woman whose name I didn't recognize. She urged me to call her back immediately, claiming she had crucial information to share. At first, I dismissed it as a telemarketer or some kind of scam. I deleted the message, feeling relieved to have dodged what I thought would be an irritating conversation. Normally, I would block the number too, but that day, I simply forgot. Later in the afternoon, I received another call from the same number. This time, curiosity piqued, I let it go to voicemail. When I listened to the message, a sense of unease washed over me. The woman introduced herself as the spouse of a former coworker of Sarah's who had recently passed away. She stated that she had important information for me, and my heart began to race. I assumed she might just be wanting to inform Sarah about her coworker's death, so I closed the door to my office and called her back, my mind racing with concern. She answered promptly and got straight to the point. After expressing her condolences, she explained that her husband had lost his battle with cancer after a long, grueling year. I offered my sympathies, wrote down his name, and mentioned I would inform Sarah about his passing. But before I could finish, she cut me off, her voice steady but urgent. "That's not why I called." Her next words were a punch to the gut. She told me that while her husband was in hospice care, he confessed to her that he had been involved in a 3-year affair with my wife, from mid-2015 through the summer of 2018. My world tilted on its axis. I felt as though ice water coursed through my veins, and my heart raced uncontrollably. I was stunned into silence, desperately trying to process what I had just heard. Once I regained a semblance of composure, I asked if perhaps her husband had been hallucinating due to his medications. Surely, this couldn't be true. But she insisted she was absolutely certain, having discovered hundreds of messages between them on his laptop. She went on to describe finding a disturbing video of their last encounter, which had taken place on August 17, 2018. As she spoke, I repeated, almost like a mantra, "I don't believe it." The words felt hollow, even to me. Desperate for some shred of proof, I asked her to send me the evidence. I provided my personal email address, hoping against hope that what she sent would somehow prove this to be a terrible misunderstanding. She promised to send me several of the most shocking messages, but the video file was too large for email. I felt a knot tightening in my stomach as she explained this. "Do you have a flash drive?" I asked, clinging to the hope that there was a way to uncover the truth without spiraling into despair. When she said she didn't, she rushed out to buy one, her urgency echoing my own frantic heart. When she returned, I guided her through the process of transferring the video onto the drive, my fingers trembling with anticipation and dread. The next morning, she overnighted the drive to my office, and I received it that Thursday morning. My heart pounded as I brought my personal laptop to work, determined to face whatever lay ahead. As I inserted the thumb drive and hit play, my breath caught in my throat. What I saw shattered the world I had known. There was Sarah, my beloved wife, with a gangly man I'd never seen before, engaged in acts of intimacy that felt like a betrayal so deep it cut to my core. The images played out before me, each frame more surreal than the last, and I felt as though the ground beneath me had given way. Every loving memory, every shared dream now seemed tainted by the reality unfolding on my screen. I was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, and an all-consuming heartbreak. How could this happen? How could the woman I loved betray our vows in such a devastating way? The weight of it was suffocating, as if I were drowning in a sea of despair. I paused the video, my mind racing as I tried to comprehend what I had just witnessed. The life we built together felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by a betrayal I couldn't escape. I thought of all the plans we had for the future, our dream of starting a family, of building a life filled with love. How could we ever recover from this? In that moment, I knew I had to confront Sarah. But how does one approach the love of their life with such devastating news? The thought of it tore at me. What if this revelation shattered everything we had? Or could it lead us to a deeper understanding of one another? My heart ached at the thought of what lay ahead, and as the video played in my mind, I was left grappling with the painful reality that my world would never be the same again. I spent the next few days in turmoil, wrestling with my thoughts and emotions. Every moment I spent with Sarah felt heavy with unspoken words, with the truth hanging between us like an uninvited guest. I wanted to believe that there was some explanation, some reasonable justification for what I had seen. But with each passing hour, the weight of my suspicions grew heavier, gnawing at the edges of my sanity. Ultimately, I couldn't postpone the conversation any longer. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation. As I prepared for that fateful moment, I felt the ground shift beneath me yet again, knowing that whatever happened next would change the course of our lives forever. I can't even begin to describe the emotions I felt after watching that video. It was horrifying, nothing short of a nightmare. The things I saw were not just disgusting, they were utterly unsanitary. In the 29-minute clip, both of them were so vocal, laughing and clearly reveling in their actions. It made me feel sick to my stomach. When I first hit play, I felt tears streaming down my face, and nausea washed over me. But as I continued watching, my sadness morphed into madness. I was filled with an overwhelming sense of anger and absolute rage. I felt like I wanted to break something, or someone. Thankfully, my wife wasn't around when I watched it. I can't even imagine what I would have done if she had been. Now, as I sit here typing this at 7:09 p.m. on Thursday evening, I've spent the last hour and a half processing what I saw. Earlier today, I called my wife and told her I was going out for dinner with clients, a story that she bought without a second thought. But as for my next steps, I'm leaning heavily toward divorce. There's no way I could force myself to stay with her after what I witnessed, and I can't imagine ever forgiving her. Honestly, after seeing what she did, I wouldn't want to get near her without wearing a hazmat suit. I'm dead serious about that. The fact that the video is 4 years old doesn't change anything. She cheated on me, and I can't accept that. This brings me to my dilemma. Should I confront her with the evidence and give her a chance to explain herself, or should I go straight to an attorney and serve her divorce papers? I haven't told anyone else about this yet. Honestly, I feel too ashamed to share my pain, which is why I've turned to this platform to discuss my situation anonymously and gather your thoughts. I promise to read every comment. Story 1 update. After grabbing some dinner on Thursday evening, I returned home and tried to act as normal as possible around my wife. Thankfully, I managed to keep a safe distance from her, and she didn't attempt to initiate any closeness. On Friday, I took the day off work and met with a divorce attorney after doing a ton of research online. I presented her with the evidence, including the video, and she calmly explained that while my wife clearly violated our marriage vows, it wouldn't have any effect on the divorce proceedings. I asked her how that could be possible, and she told me that our state is a no-fault divorce state. This means either party can file for divorce without having to prove wrongdoing, no questions asked. I was stunned. How could that be the law? She informed me that we could thank Ronald Reagan for this law, which he signed back in the late 60s when he was the governor of California. Apparently, he was the first in the nation to do so, and since then, many other states have followed suit. This revelation caught me off guard. I had always thought Reagan was one of our best presidents, but now I'm not so sure. Regardless, it doesn't change my resolve to move forward with the divorce. It just means I'll be leaving this ordeal a lot poorer than I anticipated. The hardest part for me right now is deciding whether to confront her directly or just wait until she's served with the papers. I want to hold off on confronting her, but I don't think I can endure this charade for much longer. It has been incredibly difficult being around her these past 2 nights, and the thought of seeing her again tonight fills me with dread. It's Saturday morning now, and I'm writing this while sitting outside a coffee shop just down the street from my house. I told my wife I needed to reply to some work emails and that I was heading to the cafe to do it, something I do from time to time. Luckily, she didn't ask to come with me, but she's already texted me a couple of times asking when I'll be home. I can't shake the feeling that she senses something is off with me. For now, that's all I have to report. Thank you all for your advice and recommendations. It's been comforting to read your stories and hear what you have to say. Your support means the world to me as I navigate this painful chapter of my life. Story 2 Update. Hello everyone, I'm back with another update on my tumultuous journey. It's Sunday morning, and as I sit outside my favorite coffee shop, sipping a strong brew, I can't help but reflect on how far I've come in just a week. I'm about 20 miles away from home, trying to find some solace in this bustling little cafe while my mind is racing with thoughts and emotions. Last Sunday was the breaking point for me. I finally confronted my wife about her affair, something I had been dreading and contemplating for what felt like an eternity. The entire week leading up to it had been filled with tension, unease, and sleepless nights. It felt like I was living in a shadow, constantly waiting for the inevitable truth to surface. Saturday had been a distraction, as we spent the day at a museum with another couple, soaking up art and culture, trying to act like everything was fine. But when the sun set and we returned home, I could feel the walls closing in on me. That Saturday night, both of us were exhausted from the day's activities, and she didn't attempt any closeness. But the next morning, sitting in the kitchen while she brewed coffee, I felt an overwhelming urge to address the elephant in the room. I probably shouldn't have confronted her at that moment. My emotions were running high, and the anger simmering beneath the surface was hard to ignore. Yet, I couldn't wait any longer. "Do you know so-and-so?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual but failing miserably. As soon as I uttered the name of her affair partner, a science teacher at the junior high, I saw her expression shift from surprise to dread. "No," she initially said, but her hesitance quickly led to a reluctant admission. I was ready for this moment. "I just read that he passed away from cancer," I told her, watching her reaction closely. "That's terrible," she said, her voice suddenly shaky. She had never claimed to know him well, but her discomfort was palpable, and I knew there was more to the story. I decided to let her sit in the discomfort for a moment, observing her as she poured coffee into my mug. She seemed nervous, glancing at her phone every few seconds, clearly avoiding my gaze. After a few minutes of torturous silence, I couldn't take it any longer. "Have you ever worked with him?" I asked, trying to gauge her reaction. "Why are you asking me about him?" she snapped, frustration etched on her face. Her defensiveness fueled my anger, and I decided to cut through the tension. "Are you sure about that?" I pressed, watching her squirm. "Yes, I'm sure." she retorted, her voice rising. At that moment, it became painfully clear that I couldn't keep dancing around the truth. I took a deep breath and finally laid it all out on the table. I know about the affair, and I have proof that you and him had a 3-year relationship. You need to tell me everything, now. Her face went pale as she tried to play innocent, saying, "What are you talking about?" But I saw through her act. "You know exactly what I mean. Stop pretending you don't." Tears began to fall as she asked how I found out. "That's not important right now," I replied coldly. "What matters is that I have all your messages with him." In a desperate attempt to escape the truth, she tried gaslighting me, claiming those messages were just harmless role-playing. "It never went any further," she insisted, her voice shaky. I was done with her excuses. I pulled up the video I had of them together, hitting play, and the color drained from her face. Her entire demeanor shifted, she went from denial to frantic apologies in a heartbeat. "It all happened 4 years ago," she cried. "I'm a different person now." Feeling the walls closing in, I got up from my chair and walked out to the patio, desperately needing some space to breathe. She followed me, tears streaming down her face as she begged me to talk. "Please, just listen to me," she cried, but I shook my head, needing solitude to process the magnitude of what was happening. As her cries grew louder, I stepped back into the house, trying to keep things from escalating into a public spectacle. But inside, I was seething with anger. I marched into the bedroom and started packing my things. She rushed after me, trying to hold on to me, pleading for me to stay. "If you don't let me go," I warned her, "I'll send that video to your parents." The threat hung heavy in the air, and I could see the realization hit her. She released her grip, collapsing onto the bed in a fit of sobs. "I'm so sorry," she cried, her voice muffled by her tears. I finished packing my belongings, each item feeling heavier than the last. As I headed for the door, she asked, "Where are you going?" I looked back, my heart heavy but resolute. "I'm staying in a hotel for a while," I said flatly, leaving her in that moment of despair as I walked out of our home. Now, here I am, sitting in this coffee shop, the comforting hum of conversation surrounding me as I try to wrap my mind around everything that has happened. The weight of betrayal still lingers in the back of my mind, but there's a flicker of hope, too. I know I need to take this one day at a time. I'm ready to face whatever comes next, no matter how painful it may be. Life has a strange way of unfolding, and while I might feel lost right now, I'm determined to find my way forward. I found myself sitting at a quiet cafe just down the road from my office, trying to collect my thoughts. The atmosphere was tense, yet serene, a perfect backdrop for the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. After some contemplation, I decided to make a reservation at the hotel directly across the street. I figured I could use a little time away to think about my next steps. As the morning dragged on, my phone buzzed relentlessly with calls and texts from my wife. I chose to ignore them for now, needing that space to gather my resolve. It wasn't until I checked into the hotel around 3 p.m. that I finally answered one of her calls. The moment I heard her voice, I braced myself for what turned into nearly 2 hours of intense conversation. "I'm going to divorce you," I stated firmly, giving her no room for misunderstanding. I could hear the panic rise in her voice as she pleaded with me to reconsider, trying every angle to change my mind. As we navigated the painful conversation, I pressed her to explain her relationship with her affair partner. Her response shocked me. She claimed they shared a particularly disgusting fetish and insisted their physical encounters were devoid of emotional significance. In a desperate attempt to validate her claims, she began body-shaming the guy, saying, "You can see from the video just how unattractive and emaciated he is. Look," she continued, "you have to believe me, I would never leave you for him. This was just about satisfying a kink, something I'm over now." I couldn't hold back. "You have serious mental problems," I shot back, suggesting she seek professional help. In an unexpected twist, she lashed onto my words, admitting, "You're right. I must be insane for doing this." Then, in a sudden shift, she said it had all happened 4 years ago and that she had never once considered being with anyone else since. I pushed back, reminding her that the only reason she ended the affair was because her partner had moved 5 hours away for a new job. "You ended it when he moved? Really?" "The video was recorded just before he left town," I challenged her, watching as the truth dawned on her. In that moment, it became painfully clear, my wife was not only a cheater but also a habitual liar. The following Monday, I met with my attorney to discuss the fallout from that weekend. I explained everything that had transpired, making it clear that I wanted to expedite the divorce process. She assured me she would handle it but also advised me to cut off all contact with my wife moving forward, stating that all future communication should go through her. Confronting her without witnesses is risky, she warned, recounting cases where husbands had been falsely accused in similar situations. I promised her I'd heed her advice. With everything moving so quickly, I hadn't even had the chance to mourn the loss of my marriage. I felt a strange detachment, perhaps it was my mind's way of shielding me from the heartbreak. But deep down, I knew the pain would catch up with me eventually. Now for the third update. After I gave my attorney the green light to expedite the divorce, I gathered my family to share the news. Their reactions were a mix of shock and disappointment directed at my wife. However, their main concern was me, making sure I was all right and taking care of myself. I reassured them that I was managing, but their worry led them to arrange a visit the following week. They wanted to come down and spend a few days with me, which brought me some comfort amidst the chaos. The next day, I received an unexpected call from my mother-in-law. Her voice was shaky as she apologized for her daughter's behavior. "Is there any chance you would reconsider or at least take some time to think things through before finalizing the divorce?" she asked, her tone filled with desperation. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "I already have thought about it, and my decision is final." It felt strange to reject her plea, but I had to stay true to my convictions. As we continued talking, I realized this situation was impacting not just me, but everyone around me. My mother-in-law's concerns were genuine, and it made me think about how many lives had been affected by my wife's actions. This wasn't just a matter of love lost, it was a ripple effect that would change the dynamics of our families forever. I hung up feeling a mix of sadness and determination. I had made my choice, and now I needed to prepare myself for what lay ahead, both legally and emotionally. It was going to be a long road, but I was ready to walk it, one step at a time. What I really wanted was an amicable divorce so we could both start fresh and move on with our lives. When I spoke to Kate, she said she understood my position. Our conversation ended on a relatively positive note, considering the circumstances. I hoped that would be the last of the emotional turmoil between us. The following week, my parents flew into town on Thursday. They checked into the hotel where I was staying, and I took Thursday and Friday off work so I could spend quality time with them. We had a wonderful time sightseeing, exploring the city's famous landmarks, and indulging in delicious dinners at local restaurants. Laughter filled the air as we reminisced about old family memories, and for a moment, I almost forgot about the storm brewing in my personal life. On Saturday morning, my mom called me with some surprising news. She mentioned that my mother-in-law had reached out to her the night before. Both she and my father-in-law wanted to meet my parents for lunch. I didn't see any issue with it. Our families had become somewhat friendly since Kate and I got married. They weren't best friends or anything, but they kept in touch regularly, so I thought it was fine. I told my parents about it, and they were happy to meet my in-laws. While they were having lunch, my mom called me again. "Your in-laws would like to see you," she said. I hesitated for a moment but then agreed to meet them. I suggested they come over to the hotel, and we could chat out on the back deck by the pool. When they arrived, it felt surreal. My in-laws greeted me with warm smiles, and despite everything, it was nice to see them again. They weren't pushy at all, instead, They came across as genuinely concerned about my well-being. We exchanged small talk and caught up on family happenings, all while keeping the atmosphere light. As we chatted, it became clear that they were worried about me. They didn't try to convince me to stay with Kate until the very end of our meeting. It was then that my mother-in-law hesitantly broached the topic. "Is there any chance you could forgive her and stay married?" she asked, her voice filled with hope. I sighed deeply and shook my head. "Unfortunately, there isn't." My mother-in-law's face fell, but she quickly masked it with a nod. "Okay, I understand. I just had to at least try," she said, her voice thick with emotion. We all shared hugs, and as they left, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. That chapter of my life was closing, and I could finally start to breathe again. Now, all I had to do was wait for the hearing to be scheduled so I could finalize everything and truly move on. But I had thought that with our state's no-fault divorce laws, the process would be quick and painless. Unfortunately, I was mistaken. I found myself waiting almost 9 long months for the hearing. I had also assumed that no-fault divorce meant that both parties would split everything equally and walk away without complications, but that wasn't how it played out. Despite the fact that I was the one who paid 70% of the bills and contributed 85% of the assets, I was still required to pay alimony. Instead of paying monthly alimony for 4 years, my attorney managed to negotiate a one-time lump sum payment of $29,000 that would be given to my ex-wife after we sold our house. How was any of this fair? My attorney explained that I could have claimed the assets I owned prior to our marriage. However, I made the mistake of adding Kate as a joint owner on my accounts right after we got married. That decision meant those assets were split 50-50. It felt like a raw deal, and I couldn't help but replay my choices in my mind. But there was nothing I could do about it now. I just had to focus on getting through the process and reclaiming my freedom. As for my ex-wife, throughout the divorce proceedings, we maintained a somewhat civil relationship. However, she kept pushing for a second chance, right up to the day we finalized everything, and she has continued to do so in the weeks following. Kate claimed she was infatuated with me and promised she would never give up trying to win me back. While she wasn't overly persistent, every few weeks, I would receive a text reminding me that she was still thinking about me and that if I ever changed my mind, she would always be available. But the craziest thing happened last week. Out of nowhere, Kate texted me, asking if I'd be willing to have a child with her. I was taken aback. "No, we're divorced," I replied, trying to keep my tone firm but calm. She then asked if I would consider being a sperm donor so she could have a child that way. I quickly shot back, "No, that's not going to happen. If you want a child, you need to pursue another relationship or find a donor." Her response was alarming. She told me that she didn't want another man and that if I wouldn't father her child, then she simply wouldn't have children at all. That text conversation left me feeling disturbed and uneasy. I truly hope she comes to her senses soon. While I do care about her well-being, I think it's time for me to stop communicating with her altogether. The next time she reaches out, I plan to tell her firmly yet delicately that we need to cut off contact. I also think I need to call her parents and let them know what she's been up to, hoping they can intervene and handle the situation in a more constructive manner. So, that's where I am now. I may have lost half my net worth through this divorce, but at least I'm finally free. I'm ready to embrace whatever comes next and determined to rebuild my life on my own terms. It's a new beginning, and for the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful about the future.